On a Saturday afternoon in Denver, Colorado, a 41-year-old man with a scarred forearm and a voice that sounded like gravel under a boot stood in the center of a martial arts gymnasium and said nothing. Three men in black belts were on the mat at his feet. One was vomiting, one was curled around his knee, one was sobbing into the collar of his gi. 200 people were on their feet. Phones were out. A live stream that had started as a joke was running on 43,000 screens across 12 states. And somewhere in the back of that crowd, a woman in a charcoal blazer who ran one of the largest sports sponsorship firms in the Rocky Mountain region lowered her tablet, stopped taking notes, and stared. The man on the mat looked at no one. He picked up his cone bag. He walked back to the side mat to finish setting up his 3 o'clock class. In 52 seconds, he had answered every question they ever asked about him. But the path to that moment had started 48 hours earlier, and it had been paved with every indignity 3 small men could manufacture. This is the story of Marcus Webb, and I promise you, if you stop listening before the end, you will regret it. The story begins on a Tuesday morning, 3 weeks before any of that happened. Marcus Webb was 38 years old, and he had been awake since 4:47 in the morning because his daughter, Lily, had a bad dream and crawled into his bed and pressed her cold feet against his shins until she fell back asleep. He lay there in the dark for a while with her hair against his cheek, listening to her breathe. There was a photograph on the nightstand. A woman with dark eyes and a wide smile, holding a newborn in a hospital blanket. Marcus had not moved that photograph since the day they brought it home from the hospital. He had moved everything else in that apartment at least twice. The photograph stayed. He made Lily oatmeal with brown sugar at 6:15. He packed her backpack with her Tuesday folder and a note that said, "Have a good day, Bug," drawn with a little cartoon beetle wearing a crown. Because Lily had decided 2 years ago that bugs were royalty, and Marcus had decided that anything Lily believed with her whole heart was probably worth drawing. He dropped her at Westfield Elementary by 7:30, then drove his 12-year-old pickup truck across town to a place called Pinnacle Combat and Fitness, which billed itself as Denver's premier training facility for serious athletes. The parking lot was chrome and glass and fresh paint. There was a sign on the front door that listed membership rates. The cheapest tier was $650 a month. Marcus had been hired 3 days ago by the facility's owner, Coach Dale Hargrove, to lead a women's self-defense class on Tuesday and Thursday evenings. 6 weeks of sessions, 8 students enrolled. Marcus had one condition when Hargrove called him. "Nobody asks about my background." Hargrove agreed. He had read Marcus's application. He had also read between the lines of it. He didn't push. What Hargrove had not told Marcus was that the gym's head instructor, a man named Cole Briggs, 29 years old, had been the face of Pinnacle Combat for 6 years, and that Cole's student numbers were in freefall, and that Cole was the kind of man who responded to being threatened by threatening first. Marcus walked in carrying a duffel bag and a stack of crash pads. Cole was standing at the front desk with 2 other men. The first was Derek Vance, 26, Cole's shadow, who filmed his own breakfast every morning and thought of every human interaction as potential content. The second was Preston Alcott, 31, a private lesson client who had been training at Pinnacle for 2 years on his family's money and still could not pass the Blue Belt curriculum. These were the 3. Cole looked at Marcus. He looked at the crash pads. He looked at Marcus's forearm, where the burn scar ran from wrist to elbow in ridged, dark lines that the overhead fluorescence caught at the wrong angle. Cole said, loud enough for the front desk girl to hear, "Hargrove hired a cook?" Derek lifted his phone. Preston laughed. Marcus did not look at them. He walked past, set his pads down on the side mat, and checked the clock. He had 40 minutes before his students arrived. He used them to set up cones, mark the drill lanes with tape, and arrange the pads in the order he would use them. He did all of this without speaking. He was comfortable in silence. He had been building a life inside it for 4 years. His first student arrived at 5:57. Her name was Carol Britton, 53 years old, a grocery store manager who had left her husband 14 months ago and still slept with a kitchen chair propped under her bedroom door handle. She had emailed Marcus before the first session with one sentence: "I do not want to be afraid in my own body anymore." Marcus had read that email 4 times. He walked over when she came in, crouched to her level even though she was sitting on a bench, and pressed his hand once against her shoulder. Carol exhaled the way people exhale when they have been holding something very heavy for a very long time. Across the gym, Cole watched that exchange. He said something to Derek. Derek raised his phone. 7 more women filtered in over the next 6 minutes. Average age 44. Every single one of them had a reason to be there that she did not put into words the first night. Marcus could read the reasons anyway. He had spent 8 years in the United States Marine Corps. He knew what it looked like when a person had learned to expect pain from directions they trusted. He taught the wrist release that night. He taught it 6 times, slowly with his left hand, because his right hand does not have full rotation at the wrist anymore. And when one of the women asked why, he said, concise, and without drama, old injury. Then he moved on. Cole walked through the side mat with a sponsorship guest at 6:45. He did not have to walk through that space. He chose to. He raised his voice in a way that was designed to reach the women without looking like he was addressing them. "And over here," he said, "we have our community wellness program. Therapy mat stuff." He laughed. The sponsorship guest chuckled once and then stopped chuckling because something about the room made humor feel wrong. Cole stepped closer to Marcus and waited until Marcus bent down to adjust a pad. Then Cole kicked it. The pad slid 3 feet across the polished floor. Marcus straightened. He looked at Cole for 1 second. Then he walked to the pad, picked it up, carried it back, and set it down in exactly the same place. He turned to his 8 students. "Tonight we learn the wrist release," he said, his voice rough but steady. "Because the first thing a bad man does is grab you, and the first thing you do is leave." The sponsorship guest was no longer laughing at all. He glanced at Cole. Cole forced a grin and steered him away. Derek posted the clip that night. The caption read, "New instructor at Pinnacle." Cole gives him the welcome tour. The clip was 17 seconds long. It got 22,000 views in 11 hours. Marcus did not see it. He was home making Lily her dinner and listening to her tell him about a caterpillar she had found on the playground. That was day 1. The trail had already started. Week 2, Thursday evening. Marcus was demonstrating a ground recovery technique. How to stand safely after being knocked down. For the 4th time, when Preston Alcott walked in with 2 clients he was trying to impress. Preston stopped in the middle of the mat and pointed at Marcus's arm. He said, loudly, "Construction accident? Or did somebody finally teach you a lesson?" One of Preston's guests laughed. The other looked at the floor. A woman named Renata Ford, 41, ex-Navy corpsman, stood up from the drill line. She said, "You do not talk to him like that." Marcus placed a hand on Renata's shoulder, one firm press. She sat down. Marcus turned to face Preston. He did not raise his voice. He did not step closer. He simply rolled his sleeve back down, slow and deliberate, and let his eyes hold Preston's, until Preston stopped smiling. Then he turned back to his class. "The recovery drill one more time," he said. "Watch the hips, not the hands." Preston left, but the women had seen Marcus's hand shake. Only once, for only a fraction of a second, when he rolled that sleeve. They said nothing about it. After class, Carol stayed to fold the mats. She asked him quietly, "Are you okay?" He nodded. Then he asked her the same question. Carol's eyes filled. "He sounded like my ex-husband." Marcus sat down on the mat beside her. He did not speak. He stayed there, breathing until her shoulders came down. That was the second mark on the trail. What Cole saw from across the gym was something that made his jaw tighten. He saw a man who did not break. Cole had built his entire career on breaking people gently. Students who needed his validation. Sponsors who wanted his image. Women who laughed at his jokes on cue. Marcus did not laugh. Marcus did not need him. And 2 more of Cole's evening students had dropped their enrollment that week and joined a competing gym across town that charged $300 less per month. Cole called Derek that night. He said, "I want everything he does on camera. Everything." Friday morning, week 2. Marcus came in early to prep equipment for his Thursday makeup class. The gym was nearly empty. He heard voices from the protein bar before they heard him. Cole was saying, "She is a diversity hire, man." Hargrove needed the city wellness contract. Otherwise, we would not have a mute veteran teaching stretching in my gym. Derek said, "Bro, what?" Cole said, "It is true. This place used to mean something. Now we have Carol, the battered housewife, and a man with a busted hand pretending he was some kind of soldier." Marcus was standing in the doorway. Derek saw him first. His face went the color of chalk. Cole turned. He looked at Marcus. He did not apologize. He raised his protein shake in a slow, mocking toast. "Morning, instructor," he said. "Eavesdropping is a bad habit." Marcus walked past both of them without looking. He entered the side mat, set his bag down, sat on a crash pad in the empty gym for 30 full seconds. His right hand closed into a fist. His knuckles went white. It was the only time in 23 days that his body would betray anything he was thinking. Then he opened his hand. He stood up. He started setting cones. That night, alone in his apartment after Lily was asleep, Marcus opened the footlocker at the foot of his bed for the first time in over a year. He took out 3 things and laid them on the kitchen table: a folded American flag in a triangle of glass, a silver star medal in its original case, and a sealed envelope marked DD Form 214, the official Department of Defense record of his service. He looked at them for a long time without touching them. Then he put them back, closed the lid, and went to sit by Lily's bedroom door and listen to her breathe in the dark. Not yet, but soon. Week 3, Saturday night. Cole Briggs turned 29 at a party he threw for himself on the upper deck of Pinnacle Combat. Open bar, loud music, 50 guests, most of them drunk by 9. Marcus had finished his last evening session at 8:50 and was heading for the exit when one of his students called out. She had left her phone on the side mat. He turned around. He walked back in. That was the moment Cole and his group came down the stairs. Preston spotted Marcus first. "Oh, look," he said. The night class janitors stayed late. They spread out around him, not touching, just filling the space between Marcus and the exit. Derek lifted his phone and hit live stream. Cole said, "Marcus, here is what we are going to do. You demonstrate one self-defense technique, just one, right here, right now. Then you walk out. Deal?" One of the other men slow clapped. Another whooped. Preston feinted a punch at Marcus's face and pulled it back at the last second. Marcus did not blink. He stood still. His breathing was regular. His resting heart rate in that moment was 62 beats per minute, the same as it had been during 3 separate firefights in Helmand Province, Afghanistan, when the enemy had been considerably more dangerous than a drunk man with a phone and a borrowed black belt. He waited. 4 minutes. 4 minutes of being circled, mocked, and filmed while his face stayed as blank as carved stone. He counted the witnesses. He counted the camera angles. He memorized every face. He memorized the exact height and angle of Derek's phone. He was building something. They could not see it yet. Coach Hargrove came down the stairs. He took one look at the circle. He took one look at the live stream. He said, "Everybody upstairs now." His voice had a quality Marcus had heard before in certain commanding officers, the kind of voice that has learned from having been wrong once in a terrible way. The circle broke. Marcus walked out. He did not look at Hargrove. He sat in his truck in the parking lot with his hands on the steering wheel for 90 seconds. His breath was steady. Then he pulled out his phone. He dialed a number he had been keeping in his contacts for 3 years for exactly this reason. The woman who answered was named Eleanor Ames. She was a veterans' rights attorney with an office in Aurora. She picked up on the second ring. "Marcus," she said, "it is time." She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Do not initiate anything. Wear the body camera under your instructor patch starting Monday. We are going to let them build their own case." Marcus said, "Understood." He hung up. Upstairs, Cole raised a glass to his own reflection in the upper deck window. He was certain he had won something tonight. He did not know that the man he had spent 3 weeks humiliating had survived a buried IED that killed 2 of his teammates in a province 10,000 miles from Denver. He did not know that Marcus had a lawyer, 3 independent witnesses, a detailed log of every incident with dates and times, written in a spiral notebook that he kept in his daughter's dresser drawer because that was the last place anyone would look. He did not know that a body camera would arrive by Tuesday mail. He did not know that every word he had said in that gym for 23 days was about to become evidence. He thought he was the predator. He had absolutely no idea he had just walked into a trap built by someone who used to teach predator behavior to United States Marines. Tuesday evening, the body camera arrived. Marcus clipped it under his instructor patch, tested the angles in his apartment bathroom mirror, adjusted it twice, then drove to the gym. He had 30 minutes before his class. He used 20 of them teaching Lily how to say goodnight in American Sign Language on a video call because Lily had decided she wanted to learn sign language after seeing a documentary about it at school, and Marcus had been teaching himself alongside her for 2 weeks. He walked into Pinnacle at 5:40. A young woman named Jordan Sutcliffe was sitting on the floor just inside the entrance. Knees pulled to her chest, right arm in a sling. She was 19 years old. She had been training BJJ at this gym since she was 16, and until recently, Cole Briggs had been her favorite instructor. Something had changed in him over the past few months. He yelled more. He grabbed harder. He had dislocated her shoulder in a drill session 4 days ago, and when she had told him to stop, he had kept going. She heard the pop. He laughed. Then Derek had posted the clip. The caption read, "College girl learns the hard way." Marcus was on his knees beside Jordan in 3 seconds. She showed him the clip on her phone. Her parents could not afford legal representation. Hargrove had called it an accident. If she filed a complaint with the State Athletic Commission, she risked losing her training scholarship. She looked up at Marcus and said, "I do not think I am going to be okay." Something in Marcus's face changed. Not anger exactly. Something older and quieter and much colder. He picked up the whiteboard marker and wrote 4 words. He turned the board toward Jordan. "You are not alone," she read it. He met her eyes. "I have people," he said. "Starting tonight, so do you." That night, Marcus texted Eleanor 1 sentence. "Bring the cameras. Saturday is demo day." Saturday was the facility's biggest annual showcase. 200 guests, press, sponsors, 3 tripod cameras on the main mat. Cole had been promoting it for 6 weeks. It was supposed to be his crown. He had no idea the trap had just doubled. Demo day, Saturday afternoon. 200 people packed the upper deck and lined the rails above the main mat. Sponsors in lanyards. Local press with notebooks. A live stream from Derek's phone to 41,000 subscribers. Cole wore a fresh black gi with sponsor logos on every panel. Preston sat front row in an expensive tracksuit, holding a phone for backup angles. Eleanor Ames was already in row 3 when the doors opened, a briefcase at her feet, a notarized timeline of every documented incident ready on the tablet in her lap, and the body camera feed from Marcus's patch running live on a separate screen. Jordan was beside her, sling still on, white-knuckled. Carol and Renata sat in the row behind them. 6 more of Marcus's students filled out the seats around them. Marcus's people, in position, on the record. Marcus was on the side mat setting cones. His 3 o'clock class started in 1 hour. He was wearing his instructor patch. The camera beneath it was rolling in 4K resolution. Cole took the microphone. "Before the main demonstrations begin," he announced, "I want to invite our newest addition to the Pinnacle team for a special guest demo. Marcus, come on up. Show us what the night class is all about." The crowd turned. Cameras swiveled. Marcus did not move. Cole stepped off the platform and walked across the main mat toward him. "Come on," he said quietly, smiling for the cameras. "One technique. Charity round." "Do not be shy," Marcus said. "No thank you." 2 words. His voice was rough, but they carried. The crowd murmured. Cole's smile went sharp at the edges. He said, "I was not asking." His hand shot out and clamped around Marcus's right wrist. He yanked Marcus forward, 2 steps, onto the center of the main mat, in full view of every camera in the building. That was the moment the law gave Marcus Webb permission. What happened next lasted 52 seconds. By the end, those 52 seconds would be replayed 19 million times across 11 platforms. Sports commentators would slow it down frame by frame. A Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu federation would use it in an instructional video about body mechanics with the subject's permission. A veterans advocacy organization would put it in a fundraising campaign with 2 words overlaid on the freeze frame: still serving. But in the moment, it was simply this. The first takedown. Marcus's hips rotated 3 inches. His left foot hooked behind Cole's right ankle in a technique called Kosoto Gake, one of the oldest throwing movements in the history of martial arts, documented in Japanese combat texts going back to the 1700s. Cole's own grip on Marcus's wrist became the lever that put him on his back. The sound of Cole's head bouncing off the mat was sharp and carried all the way to the rafters. A woman in row 2 gasped. 3 seconds. The choke. Derek lunged from the side, swinging his free hand in a wide haymaker, while his phone hand swung back. Marcus slipped under it the way water slips under a door. 2 steps and he was behind Derek. His right arm slid under Derek's chin like threading a needle. Rear naked choke, standard application, taught in every legitimate submission grappling curriculum in the country. 6 seconds later, Derek was slapping the mat with both hands, his phone clattering across the floor, the live stream still running from where the phone landed, pointed at the ceiling lights, capturing every second of Derek's own face going the color of a fire truck. 41,000 viewers had front row seats. 11 seconds total, the knee lock that was not a break. Preston charged in next, swinging a wild kick at Marcus's head. Marcus caught his leg midair with the casual ease of someone picking up a bag of groceries. He stepped, twisted, dropped, applying a controlled knee bar, slow, mechanical, deliberate. He did not crank it. He locked it and waited. Preston screamed once, sharp and high, and tapped the mat 4 times in rapid succession with his free hand. Marcus released him immediately. Preston curled into a ball. His expensive tracksuit was streaked with tears and sweat. 23 seconds. The finish. Cole was back on his feet. His face was the color of a stop sign. His gi was twisted around his ribs. He came in throwing a roundhouse kick with everything he had in him, every drop of ego and panic and rage. Marcus slipped inside it, caught his arm at the wrist, rotated his hips, and dropped him into a kimura, a shoulder lock named after the Japanese champion Masahiko Kimura and taught in every combat sports program in the world. Cole's shoulder reached the limit of human joint mobility. He screamed it 3 times. I tap, I tap, I tap. The cameras on the upper deck caught it from 40 feet away. 52 seconds total. Marcus let go. He stood up. He stepped back. He looked at the 3 men on the mat for exactly 1 second. Then he turned to the crowd. He found Jordan Sutcliffe at the rail, her sling still on, her one good hand pressed to her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Watching the man who had dislocated her shoulder curl around his knee on the same floor where he had laughed at her. Marcus gave Jordan one small nod. Then he picked up his cone bag and walked back to the side mat to finish setting up his 3 o'clock class. The silence in that gymnasium lasted 4 full seconds. Then it broke like glass. Here is what I need you to understand before I tell you what happened next. When people watch a clip like this, they see the 52 seconds. They do not see the 23 days that built them. They do not see the wrist release taught to 8 women who needed it. They do not see the whiteboard message left for a 19-year-old sitting on the floor in a sling. They do not see a man sitting alone in a parking lot deciding that enough was enough, not because he had lost his temper, but because he had finally decided that the women in his class deserved someone willing to stand in the light. That is the part of this story that matters most, and the part that came next, the legal part, matters too, because it reveals exactly what 3 men did when they realized they had been caught. By 6 o'clock that evening, the clip had been mirrored to 11 platforms. By 9 o'clock, it had 8 million views. By midnight, the hashtag Pinnacle Demo Day was trending in 14 countries. Every major sports outlet picked it up with the same headline. Mystery instructor submits 3 black belts in 52 seconds. Nobody knew his name yet. In a small house in Lakewood, Colorado, a retired gunnery sergeant named Frank Dolan watched the clip on his phone, set it down on his kitchen counter, and started laughing. Slow, chest-deep laughter. He said to his wife, "I know those hips. That is Webb. That is Marcus Webb. Lord Almighty, he is still out there." In a brick office building in Aurora, Eleanor Ames was already drafting a motion. And in the trainer's lounge at Pinnacle Combat, Cole Briggs, holding ice to his shoulder, was calling a personal injury attorney. He had decided he was going to destroy Marcus Webb. He had no idea how badly that decision was about to backfire. By Sunday morning, Tucker Brennan's attorney, Cole's attorney had filed a civil claim and 3 criminal complaints: assault, battery, reckless endangerment. The complaint described Marcus Webb as a volatile employee with a documented history of dangerous behavior. It included 3 witness affidavits, one from Cole, one from Derek, one from Preston, all 3 claiming Marcus had attacked without provocation in front of 200 witnesses. At 10:30 that morning, Derek uploaded an edited version of the demo day footage to his channel. 22 seconds. It opened with Marcus's hip rotation. It cut Cole's wrist grab entirely. It ended with Cole screaming, "I tap," while Marcus stood over him. The caption read, "Pinnacle assault. Instructor attacks 3 coaches. Criminal charges pending." The edited clip got 14 million views in 6 hours. By Sunday evening, the internet had decided Marcus Webb was the villain. Preston posted an MRI scan showing a torn ACL. He attached a fundraising link. Donations crossed $72,000 by sundown. A cable news host used the words "untreated PTSD" on live television while showing the edited clip on a loop. Marcus's phone rang at 8:14 Monday morning. It was Coach Hargrove. He said, "The board met this morning. I have to suspend you pending investigation." "I am sorry, Marcus. I tried." Marcus closed his eyes. He said, "I understand." Then he said, "My class is still scheduled tonight." Hargrove said, "Cancel it." Marcus said, "I will call each of them personally." He hung up. He sat at his kitchen table and looked at the footlocker. Then he called Carol, then Renata, then each of the other 6, one by one. He told every one of them the same thing. "The class is paused, not canceled." "I am not leaving you," Carol cried. Renata said words that would not be appropriate to repeat here. One of the women, a survivor of a home invasion, asked Marcus if he was safe at home. He said yes. It was the only thing he said all week that was not entirely true. By Monday afternoon, the district attorney's office had filed 3 misdemeanor counts: third-degree assault, harassment, reckless endangerment. If convicted on all 3, Marcus Webb faced up to 18 months in county jail. Anonymous accounts online spent 48 hours manufacturing a story that Marcus had been dishonorably discharged for assaulting a superior officer. The lie reached 4 million users before a fact-checker caught it. A columnist suggested that the city's diversity wellness contract had created a liability. Renata Ford saw that column. She walked off her shift at the Veterans Center and did not go back the next day. Marcus sat in his apartment with the lights off, and Lily asleep down the hall. Then he opened the footlocker. He took out 3 things: a folded flag in a triangle of glass, a silver star in its case, and the sealed envelope. He placed them on the kitchen table. He took a photograph with his phone and sent it to Eleanor with a single line: "Authorize full release. Everything." Eleanor responded in 80 seconds. "Confirmed. They have no idea what is coming." Thursday, 8:47 in the morning. Aurora District Court, Department 5. Marcus Webb walked through the metal detector in a dark gray suit he had bought on Wednesday afternoon from a department store 2 miles from his apartment. No metal pinned, no flag pin, a plain steel watch and a manila envelope under his arm. He had dropped Lily at school first. She had pressed her cold hands against his cheeks at drop-off and told him he looked fancy. He had told her that was the goal. Cole, Derek, and Preston sat at the plaintiff's table in suits that cost more than Marcus's truck. Cole was smiling. Preston was wearing a knee brace he did not need. The courtroom was full. Reporters, sponsors, 6 rows of Marcus's people, Carol and Renata and the other 6 night class women, Jordan in her sling, 2 Marines Marcus had served with, and at the back of the courtroom in the last row, a man with gray hair, weathered hands, and a Marine Corps lapel pin barely visible under his collar. Judge Patricia Weston called the room to order. Eleanor Ames rose. "Your Honor," she said, "the prosecution's case rests on 3 claims. 1, that my client attacked the plaintiffs without provocation. 2, that the plaintiff Preston Alcott sustained a torn ACL in the incident. 3, that my client has a documented history of violent behavior. Each of these 3 claims is false, and I am going to prove each one in this hearing." Judge Weston nodded. "Proceed." Exhibit A. Eleanor played the original 4K live stream from Derek's phone, uncut, with metadata timestamps visible. At 14 seconds into the footage, the entire courtroom watched Cole Briggs's hand reach out, grip Marcus Webb's right wrist, and yank him forward onto the main mat. Cole's attorney leaned over to whisper to him. Cole's smile dropped 1 notch. Exhibit B. Eleanor displayed 3 messages recovered by court subpoena from Derek's deleted text folder. The most damaging, sent at 11:47 on the night of the incident. "Bro, we have to sell the ACL thing, or we are finished." Preston's face went the color of old paper. Derek looked at the floor. Exhibit C. Eleanor's displayed Preston Alcott's MRI scan alongside its original file metadata. The file name read Alcott_ski_injury_2023. The date of the scan, November 9th, 2023. 3 full years before demo day. A reporter in the second row whispered loud enough for the next 3 rows to hear. "Oh my God." Preston's attorney requested a recess. Judge Weston denied it. Exhibit D. Eleanor turned to face Cole Briggs directly. "Mr. Briggs has spent 5 years marketing himself as a 3-deployment combat veteran," she said. "He has appeared on 8 podcasts, 2 local television segments, and 43 sponsored social media posts using this claim. He has accepted veteran-affiliated sponsorships totaling $418,000 based on this claim." She raised a folder. "This is the official response from the United States Department of Defense and the National Personnel Records Center pursuant to a Freedom of Information Act request. The response states that there is no record of any branch of the United States Armed Forces having any individual named Cole James Briggs matching the provided date of birth ever having enlisted, served, deployed, or been honorably discharged." She lowered the folder. "Your Honor, Mr. Briggs has committed multiple violations of federal statute 18 United States Code, Section 704, the Stolen Valor Act. This matter will be referred to the United States Attorney's Office at the close of this hearing." The courtroom was completely still. Cole's face was the color of new paper. His jaw was working, but nothing was coming out. Eleanor was not done. First witness. A man named Thomas Greer, 34, sandy hair, Pinnacle's second chair instructor, walked to the stand. He had been Cole's quiet number 2 for 3 years. He had also been keeping notes in a spiral notebook. When asked how many times he had heard Cole use the phrase "too weak for a real gym" in reference to Marcus's students, Thomas said 8. When asked to characterize Cole's behavior, Thomas said, "It was harassment, it was repeated, it was racially motivated, and every one of us on staff was afraid to say anything because Cole controlled the schedule." He looked directly at Cole. "I am done being afraid." Second witness. The man in the back row stood up. His name was Frank Dolan, gunnery sergeant, United States Marine Corps, retired, 28 years of service. He had served as senior cadre instructor at the Marine Raiders Combat Selection Course at Camp Pendleton from 2014 to 2019. He said, "Marcus Webb was my colleague and my student. He trained the instructors who trained the Raiders. He held the highest combative certification available to any United States Marine, the Marine Corps Martial Arts Program Black Belt, 6th degree. He is, without exaggeration, one of the 3 most technically complete hand-to-hand fighters I have ever stood next to while wearing a uniform." On April 14, 2019, in Helmand Province, Afghanistan, Staff Sergeant Marcus Webb's convoy struck a buried improvised explosive device. The lead vehicle was on fire. 2 Marines were killed immediately. 3 more were trapped inside. Sergeant Webb sustained a partial laceration to his right vocal cord from shrapnel and second-degree burns on his right forearm and wrist. With his own body burning, he pulled all 3 Marines out of the vehicle. 2 of them are alive today because of what he did. One of them is in this courtroom. A man in the 4th row, early 30s, with a prosthetic right leg, raised his hand. Nobody said anything. Gunnery Sergeant Dolan continued. Sergeant Webb was awarded the Silver Star and the Purple Heart by direct recommendation of his battalion commander. The citation is a matter of public record. I have a certified copy. He handed it to the bailiff. Judge Weston read the citation aloud. For conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity in action at extraordinary risk to his own life. Staff Sergeant Marcus D. Webb, United States Marine Corps. The courtroom did not make a sound. Cole Briggs was crying, not the kind of crying that earns sympathy. The kind that comes when a person has spent years pretending to be something and is finally standing in the room where the pretending is finished. Preston was looking at his shoes. Derek had not lifted his head in 5 minutes. Judge Weston looked at Eleanor. "Does your client wish to address the court?" Eleanor looked at Marcus. Marcus stood. He walked to the front of the room. He did not bring notes. He looked at Cole for 1 long second. Then he looked at Jordan Sutcliffe in the 3rd row, her sling, her white knuckles, her 20-year-old face trying very hard to hold itself together. Then he looked at Judge Weston. He said 3 words. His voice was rough, and it carried, and it cost him something to make it do that, the way it always did. He said, "I chose restraint." Judge Weston closed her file folder. "All charges against Marcus Webb are dismissed with prejudice. Mr. Briggs, Mr. Vance, and Mr. Alcott, you will be remanded for evidentiary review. The stolen valor referral and the conspiracy to obstruct charges will be forwarded to the United States Attorney's Office by close of business today." The gavel came down. Marcus walked out of the courtroom. Behind him, 3 men in expensive suits sat at a table that had become the wreckage of their own building. The consequences came down like dominoes. Within 72 hours, the United States Attorney's Office filed federal charges against Cole Briggs under the Stolen Valor Act, plus 2 state charges for perjury and 1 count of conspiracy. Every sponsorship contract, every single one, was terminated within the week. The veteran-affiliated companies demanded full restitution of the $418,000. The Regional Martial Arts Federation that had certified Cole as an instructor revoked his credentials and issued a public statement. Cole pleaded guilty in exchange for 20 months of supervised release, mandatory restitution payments, and a permanent ban from holding any instructor certification in the country. He would spend the next several years working at a freight distribution center outside Colorado Springs. Derek Vance agreed to cooperate with prosecutors in exchange for a reduced sentence. 12 months probation, 400 hours of community service assigned specifically to an at-risk youth mentorship program, so that every week for the next year, Derek Vance would sit across a table from exactly the kind of young people he had spent 3 years monetizing. That placement was not an accident. Preston Alcott's family retained private counsel and paid a quiet settlement directly to Marcus to keep Preston's name out of further proceedings. The check cleared on a Thursday. Preston moved to Arizona the following month and was not publicly heard from again. Coach Dale Hargrove held a press conference in the Pinnacle parking lot on a gray morning 2 weeks later. He stood without notes. He said, "I built this gym over 30 years. I let it become something I am ashamed of. I failed Marcus Webb. I failed Jordan Sutcliffe. I failed every woman who walked through those doors hoping to find something safe. I am selling the facility. And I am asking Marcus Webb to accept an apology that no amount of words will ever make adequate." He sold the gym 3 weeks later. He sold it to Marcus Webb. Marcus paid $1. The new sign went up on a Tuesday morning. 3 words in plain white letters on a dark background above the front door. Silent Mat. Marcus used the settlement money to make every class permanently free for women veterans, survivors of domestic violence, and any woman who arrived with a referral from a shelter, a VA social worker, or a crisis counselor. The night class became the day class. The day class became 7 days a week. Jordan Sutcliffe, shoulder fully healed within 5 months, became Marcus's first assistant instructor. She was 19 years old. She taught beginning Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu on Saturday mornings to a class of 14 women, several of whom cried quietly during their first session, and all of whom came back the following week. Carol Britton taught the Introduction to Awareness course on Wednesdays. Renata Ford taught military-style ground recovery on Tuesdays. The night class women became the leadership. And a hashtag that had started as a national news story became something quieter and more durable. Stand for restraint. It meant the same thing each time it appeared. I have the power. I am choosing not to use it until I have to. It was printed on shirts and painted on signs, and, in one case, tattooed in small letters on the inside of a woman's wrist in Denver, because she said she wanted a reminder she could look at every morning. 6 months after the verdict, the Colorado State Legislature introduced a bill informally called the Webb Standard. The bill required every certified martial arts instructor in the state to submit to annual background verification, mandatory disclosure of any prior conduct complaints, and immediate reporting of student injuries to a central registry. It passed both chambers with bipartisan support. The governor signed it on a Tuesday morning at Silent Mat. Marcus stood 2 feet behind him. He did not speak at the signing. He did not need to. And then there was Sandra Vance. She had been in the courtroom that Thursday. She was in row 3, the same row as Eleanor. The tablet she usually carried for work closed on her lap for the first time in years. She had watched Marcus say 3 words to a room full of cameras and reporters and walk away without waiting to see how they landed. She had watched him spend 3 weeks being diminished by people who had decided his worth based on his voice and his sleeve and the job title on his Pinnacle ID card. She had a daughter in college. She did not talk about this in interviews, but it was true, and it had been sitting in her chest like a stone for a long time. She showed up at Silent Mat on a Thursday morning, 6 weeks after the governor's signing. She was wearing a gray blazer, no lanyard, no business card in hand. She sat on a bench and watched Marcus run a ground recovery drill with a group of 10 women. She watched him correct a stance by tapping twice on a woman's left ankle with 2 fingers, quiet and precise. She watched him write something on the whiteboard and stand back while everyone in the room read it. She watched him sit on the mat beside a woman who was crying and stay there without trying to fix anything. When the class ended and the room emptied, she walked over. He was rolling a crash pad. He looked up. She said, "You probably do not remember me," he said. "Charcoal blazer, 2nd Thursday. You were with the Hargrove sponsorship group. You stopped at the doorway when you were leaving," she said. "You noticed that," he said. "I notice most things." She held up a folder. She said, "I am not here to offer you a sponsorship. I am here to offer you an investment, a partnership. I want to help you build 5 more Silent Mat locations across Colorado and Wyoming over the next 3 years. No branding obligations, no exclusivity, just funding, legal infrastructure, and regional connections." She looked him in the eye. "I have been waiting 4 months to make this offer, and I wanted to make sure it was the right kind of offer before I made it." He looked at the folder. He looked at her. Then he said, "My daughter has a class here at 3 o'clock this afternoon. If you want to see what you would be investing in, be here at 3. She nodded. He said, "She will want to know the person investing in her dad's gym. And that matters more to me than the folder." Sandra said, "What does she like?" Marcus thought for a moment. "She thinks bugs are royalty." Sandra smiled. It was the first time that morning she had smiled because she wanted to. "I can work with that," she said. Across town, in a freight distribution center on the south side of Denver, Cole Briggs was moving boxes on a loading dock when a younger coworker asked him to watch a clip on a phone. The clip was a news segment about Silent Mat's 2nd location opening in Fort Collins. At the end of the segment, the camera briefly showed Marcus and his daughter, Lily, cutting a ribbon in front of the door. Lily was wearing a paper crown that she had made herself. Marcus was laughing. Cole put down the box he was carrying. He set the phone back on the shelf. He did not say anything. He went back to work, 1 year after demo day. Silent Mat opens at 6 o'clock in the morning. The lights come up slow. The mats are blue and clean and warm in the right places. There are no posters of anyone on the columns. There is a single photograph in a small frame above the front desk. 3 Marines, smoke behind them, all of them alive. On a Tuesday morning, Marcus Webb teaches a beginner class of 12 women. 3 of them are veterans. 2 are domestic violence survivors. 1 is a federal public defender learning ground recovery on her lunch break. 1 is a college freshman who says she just wants to feel safer walking to her car at night. Marcus teaches them all the same thing he taught on the very first night, in a gym where 3 men had laughed at him from across the room. The wrist release. Because the first thing a bad man does is grab you, and the first thing you do is leave. After class, a young woman named Kayla Marsh stays to help roll the mats. She is 23 years old, recently separated from the United States Army, and she has been coming to Silent Mat for 4 weeks. She has not yet told anyone in the class why. She pauses, looks at Marcus's forearm, and asks the question she has been holding since her first session. "Coach, where did you get the scar?" Marcus does not flinch. He raises his right hand to his chest and makes a small, sharp sign with it. The word fire in American Sign Language. The first word he ever taught himself to sign during the long months after Helmand, when speaking still hurt more than silence. Then he lowers his hand and uses his voice. "Rough, clear, steady fire," he says, "and family." Kayla nods slowly. She does not speak. She sits down on the mat beside him, and they roll the mats together without another word. Behind them, on a shelf in the small office off the main floor, 2 things sit side by side. A silver star in its case, no longer stored face down, and a body camera, retired now, the lens covered with a small square of black tape. 2 tools, 1 for survival, 1 for proof, both still in service, just differently now. There is a lesson in this story that I do not want to pass over without naming it directly, because I think it is easy to watch the 52 seconds and miss the 23 days. Marcus Webb never announced what he was. He never corrected a single insult with a credential. He never told Cole Briggs what he had done in Helmand. He never showed anyone the silver star. He just kept showing up, teaching the wrist release, sitting on the mat beside people who needed someone to stay. He built his case in silence, with discipline, with the advice of people he trusted, and with a spiral notebook kept in his daughter's dresser drawer. There is a concept in self-defense instruction called appropriate force. It means that the level of force used in response to a threat should match the level of the threat, no more and no less. Marcus understood this better than almost anyone in that gym. He used exactly the amount of force the situation required, in the courtroom as much as on the mat. He chose restraint every single time it was available to him. And when restraint was no longer available, when Cole's hand was on his wrist, he was ready. Not because he had been waiting for a fight. Because he had been preparing for the moment when the truth would need someone willing to stand up and tell it with their body. The women in his class learned something that goes beyond technique. They learned that dignity is not granted by the room you are in, or the belt around your waist, or the opinion of the person blocking your path. It is carried quietly in how you move through a space that was not built with you in mind, and in whether you choose, every single day, to go back in anyway. That is what Carol Britton was learning when she rolled up a mat. That is what Jordan Sutcliffe was learning when she sat on the floor with her arm in a sling and decided to tell someone what had happened. That is what Renata Ford was learning when she stood up and said, "You do not talk to him like that." And it is what Marcus Webb was teaching all along, to anyone willing to pay attention. The class continues. This story is a work of fiction. All characters, names, locations, and events depicted are entirely invented for dramatic and educational purposes. Any resemblance to real individuals or actual events is coincidental. The martial arts techniques referenced, including Kosoto Gake, the rear naked choke, and the Kimura, are real and well-documented methods taught in legitimate combat sports programs worldwide. The legal statutes cited including the Stolen Valor Act under federal law, are real. The emotional experiences depicted, including the struggles of veterans reintegrating into civilian life and the courage it takes for survivors of abuse to reclaim their sense of safety, reflect documented realities that affect millions of real people. I wrote this story because I keep thinking about a particular kind of silence. The silence of a person who knows exactly what they are capable of and chooses, every single day, to lead with patience instead of power. That kind of restraint is not weakness. It is one of the hardest disciplines a human being can practice. And it is almost never the thing that gets celebrated. We celebrate the 52 seconds. We rarely talk about the 23 days. I think the 23 days are the whole story. If this reached you, I am glad you stayed until the end.